Hello again, Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, back for more Malifaux, and McTavish, Tanskin09044. There's not a whole lot to say about him. He was in the swamp, he's part of the Bayou faction, Swamp Fiend specifically, and he's just kind of a backwoods wild man, living alone, disposing of bodies if you can pay his fees. A bit like Crocodile Dundee, I suppose. But gonna give him a pretty straightforward color scheme here. He might. I think he's actually wearing gloves. I'll adjust this a little bit later on then to reflect that. But there is not much. He originated in the Outcasts faction, where the Gremlins originated as well, though now they are the Bayou. But that's kind of where he came from. I have to wait a bit to get the inside of the mouth, so okay. Get a little more on this part of the face here. And then I'm going to take Sun Yellow 09008 and start on the Crocs on the belly. This one's almost cached, but I have a spare on hand if I need it. I may need a second coat of this, but for now, just going to get the underbelly a quick once over. And I was toying with the idea of doing another Super Mario reference here, but decided against it. There was in Mario RPG on Super Nintendo, Legend of 7 Stars, one of the first bosses you fought was a top hat wearing kleptomaniac crocodile. I believe his name was Croco, but it's been a while since I played the game. You would run into several times. As weird as Malifaux can get, I didn't feel like doing a big purple crocodile here. Do something a little more standard, but not completely what you might expect when you hear the word crocodile or alligator. I suppose gator is more appropriate here. Okay, that might be dry enough to go on, so we'll give it a shot. Let's see, Deep Red 09002. And not only is this going to go inside the mouse, but McTavish seems to have a handkerchief. You know what, I'm actually going to do this handkerchief in a color other than red. It's red in the illustration. I'm going to do something different. So I'm just going to do a little bit in his mouth there. Dab that in. Bulk of this is going inside his little pet's mouth. And this is mounted on a 50mm base, and this gator is substantially larger than the Bayou gators I have done previously. You know what, I think I can get his pants too, so that's going to be Templar Blue 09056, just standard denim color. Another paint scheme idea I had from McTavish was there's a original Nintendo video game called Bayou Billy that's supposedly one of the hardest, most unfair, and most unplayable games on that system. I've seen playthroughs of it, seen reviews and critiques of it, was thinking about using that as the color scheme, but I might be doing it anyway without realizing it, but decided not to do it consciously. Alright, let's see here. That's the barrel of his rifle. And it looks like, based on the concept art, McTavish is getting a new sculptor who's actually riding his gator. But here, no. One ability he has is to put up swamp screen markers, 50mm concealing terrain. And I think I'll custom sculpt some of those, but that's a later project. I'm going to let that dry for a bit before moving on. That's a decent start. I think I will need to do a second layer of yellow on that Crocs underbelly, because with the shading it should come out just about right. It's a little transparent and modeled like that, so back in a bit. Alright. Next. Yellowed bones are 9143. Do I want to do this yet? Actually, no, not yet. Not yet. First, I'm going to do Banshee Brown and get McTavish's shirt and hat. Then I'll get the rest of the Gator's. Oh, that is not mixed right. Get the rest of the Gator's scales, and then maybe do the teeth. Okay. Okay. Being careful on the underside of the brim because I want to get the hat, not his head. Not his head. It is very early in the morning. And leaf green 09011. Gonna need a fair bit of this because this is going on the rest of the gator. I probably keep wanting to call it a crocodile because the late great crocodile hunter Steve Irwin keeps popping into my head as I work on this, but the Bayou has gators, not crocodiles, and there is a difference between the two, but I can't quite remember what it is right now. It's more than just the region of the world they live in. Something to do with the way their jaws close. One of them, the teeth are exposed when the mouth is closed, the other they're not. I cannot quite remember which is which right now. And McTavish's leg comes right up to the gator's body here. McTavish has a bandana around his neck. And I'm gonna get that in green here. Alright. That's got it pretty good. At least good enough for what I'm doing this. Gonna go ahead and let that dry completely and move on when that's done. Oh, and my system's throwing a temper tantrum again. Alright, well, you work with what you got on that regard. Okay. Alright, come back when this is dry, and hopefully my system is playing nice when I do. Alright. Yellow Bone 09143. Which is about cached. Oh, there we go. That little bit will be plenty. Again, I am keeping the brush moist but not overly wet, using just enough water to thin the paint. And just going over those big, gnarly teeth. I just realized I said the word gnarly. Fur brown. This is an army painter substitute for oiled leather. Let's see, actually, before I move on, does McTavish really have any teeth showing? Can't really tell. So just leave that as is. Get his boots, being careful not to hit the green of this big old gator. You know what, before I do any more leather, I'm going to go back into that yellow bone and I think just pick out the claws on the gator. Wasn't going to initially, but changed my mind. Just a quick little bit there. Then back into the fur brown. Let's see. Belt. The holster for that rifle, which he does use in-game as his ranged weapon. Melee weapon? He doesn't need one, he's got the gator. Yeah, this really looks like another strap for his gear, so we'll call it that. And oh yeah, he's got a pretty solid looking holster on this thing, which you definitely do not want to lose your firearm when you're living in a swamp full of dangerous creatures. In fact, the entire bayou, there's not really an alpha predator or dominant predator, it's just this relationship, this predator on predator relationship of all these different creatures that would be alpha predators just munching on each other. The gremlins, the gators, the pigs, the silurids, and even more esoteric creatures. Alright. I'm going to let that dry. When I come back, I can finish my base coats and go from there. Oh boy, and my system's conked out again. For crying out loud. Alright, let that dry. Go from there. Pretty good start so far. Alright, time to wrap up base coats. Shield Brown 09161. And this is going on the stock of the rifle. Not a whole lot in the end, but you can watch out for the trigger. That's going to be done in a steel in a minute. And then I want that to go how far out? Probably here. Okay. Tarnished steel 09206. And getting the rest of the rifle as well as the nice thick chain. I thought about making this collar and chain look rusty, but McTavish doesn't seem to be the kind of guy who would skimp on the tools of his trade, even if he skimps on his personal hygiene. And Woodstain Brown 09160. Excuse me. Again, this base insert is custom sculpted, and it's just a bit of sculpting putty put down into the cavity in the base, and just has a simple pattern carved into it. In this case, just some shallow, wide lines to resemble mud. Essentially going from a mostly smooth layer to nice and lumpy. To make sure you're okay. Let that dry completely, and then I can start shading. Oh, and my system has conked out again. This has been a really bad week. There's just more to it. So, alright. Start shading when I come back, and hopefully the next set will go reasonably well. Just we'll see. Alright, time to shade. I'm going to start with Stained Ivory 09142. And thin the paint into a wash with 1 part water to 1 part paint. And go over the base coat, in this case the yellowed bone that I used on the claws and teeth. Now, one thing with shading you need to avoid, well, so wet colors will run into each other and blend. So you need to keep that in mind. And typically, you're going to wait for base coats in one section, or shading, excuse me, in one section to dry completely before applying the next color to that section. Ruddy Leather 09109. So for example, on the gator, if I did the skin or the gums and tongue, it could very well blend in with the ivory of the teeth. Now you can make that work for you, but it's just something to be mindful of. And here I'm just going to go over the fur brown for the thick leather boots, as well as the holster for the rifle and the belts and straps and gloves. Just tracing over. This will, if thinned properly, will flow into the most recessed areas. And when combined with the highlighting, will make the lowest areas appear darker and the highest areas appear lighter. Alright. Let that dry completely, and then I can move on. Alright, next, Woodstain Brown 09160. And going over the stock of the rifle. Gonna take a bit of a gamble here. Breonne Blue 09055. And carefully go over the denim here. Oh, the rifle didn't want to do that. Where is it? Khaki Shadow 09121. So mix that up a little more. Being real careful on the underside of the brim here. Carefully picking out the shirt, avoiding the bandolier and belts. And Blackened Steel 09205. Carefully finishing up the rifle. This is a bit of a gamble since there are areas that are wet adjacent to that, but looks like it worked. Alright. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there. That leaves the skin tone on both McTavish and the gator, as well as McTavish's bandana and the interior of the mouths and the face. So I'm going to take 2 more sessions and I should have all the shading done. So back in a bit. Alright. Oh, this thing fight me already? Maybe. Okay. Pine Green 09010. Yeah, we'll start with this one. A little hair got on that gator's foot there. Again, 1 part water to 1 part paint to thin it into a wash. And I'm going to start on McTavish's bandana. And with any luck, by the time that dries up, I will be done, or by the time I'm done with the gator, that'll be dry enough I can get his skin without any worry. And I'm just going to start with the head. And I am going on the underbelly with this green as well. This should work reasonably well. Yeah, this should be fine. And now with this much surface area, I normally might use a larger brush, but I'm not going to in this case because of all the other colors that are around it. Mostly on McTavish himself, but a little crumb of old paint there. Let's just try to get that off. Okay. Well, that's stuck. Alright, I guess that's just stuck there. Oh well, my mistake. Put on the color a little bit, we'll just absorb that. Keeping the brush nice and wet during this. I'm trying to absorb the paint that got onto the collar. I'm trying to keep that shiny. No, that little booger, I wish I had caught it earlier, but it's just stuck there. That's, oh well. It's frustrating, but it is what it is, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm just going to move on and get this done. I'm going to save the tip of the tail for last, since that's going to be the part I'm most likely to accidentally bump with my fingers while I paint. Just going for a nice solid coat here. I gotta be careful about the camera. I've been kind of lax in how mindful I've been of it lately. I'm gonna use my brush itself to try to absorb, with no water, try to absorb that bit underneath the underbelly here as best I can. You can see it working. That is one way to get excess paint out of some area. Clean that out. Tanned Shadow 09043. We'll finish up McTavish's skin, and that'll just leave the base, the interior of the mouths. And I can do the eyes as well when I come back. But first, giving very little paint here, just back of the head, going around the face, and the cheeks and mouth, and the chest showing there. Almost forgot his arms. That's the only other skin showing here. Just dab it on real careful like. Got on the chain a bit, so do that same soak up trick with the brush. Let that dry completely, and when I come back into the eyes, the interior of the mouth, and finish up the shading and all that stuff. So just about done. Alright. Matte white. Oh, just about dropped it there. This is gonna work. This should work. Okay, I'm gonna carefully fill in the eyes. Carefully fill in the eyes. And while that dries, red brick 09001. Having bad news from my computer, which seems to be justifiable. Okay, let's play nice. Clogged paperclip down the nozzle. There's a lot of utility in general to be found in a common paperclip. Both practical and somewhat impractical. Thin that out. Dab in McTavish's mouth, and a little more care on the gator's mouth. And if some of this gets in between the teeth, then it just means this big old boy took a bite out of somebody. Now, pair of blacks, 9037. And first, assuming this thing is playing nice anyway, good gravy. Gonna carefully fill in pupils. Just dot that in there. Now for the gator. Gonna try to go vertical. And now thin it out with 2 to 3, that same black with 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint. But I should mention I am not done with the gator's eyes just yet. But I am going to get the mud. For each model, I kind of pick out an environment when I do the basing here that they would most likely be encountered in. So, for swamp fiends and other bayou creatures, it's muddy swamp. Now, I'm going to take a little lemon yellow, 09009, thin that out with 2 to 3 parts water to 1 part paint. Whoa, slippery bottle, and I got no grip tonight. Just going to do a little lighting effect on the gator's eyes, make them dab that in. And when that dries, there should be a black stripe in the center there. Oh boy, this thing's conking out on me in the worst way. Alright. Okay. Fine. So I want to stabilize. If I can. Well, you work with what you got. So, I'm just going to stop here before this train wreck of a clip gets any worse. And when I come back, I can highlight and detail and wrap up. Back in a bit. Oh, sure, now right when I'm about to hit stopping signs of play nice. Alright, all the shading and lighting is dry. Now to highlight. Blood red 09003. No water, straight paint only. Ragged feathered brush, something along the lines of this. Rubbing most of the pigment out on a paper towel till it looks like there's nothing left. Lightly dusting the area to be affected. Going against any raised areas. I really want to get the interior of the gator's mouth here. It's pretty good. Creamy Ivory 09144. Oh, great. And the system's conking out again already, and I've barely begun. Oh boy, you work with what you got. 09144 Creamy Ivory. This is rapidly becoming a cursed video. Alright, dusting on the claws. Bulk of this is going on the teeth. Refreshing with the paint as needed, and you can refresh directly from the paper towel, at least to a certain extent. Just a little bit of red on there, but that works. It looks like the gator hat. It makes the gator look like he had a snap recently. Oh, drop the brush. Tanned highlight 09045. Get the arms and face. Next, Ashen Blue 09057. And going against any ridges like the wrinkles, which will help catch the paint and really make those raised areas pop. Oh, where is it? Khaki highlight 09123. That little bit should be enough. Getting the right brush for the job. I'm worrying about the most readily visible areas only, so my focus will be on the top of the hat, not the underside. Shirt. Next. Okay. Pale green 09012. And this is going over the entirety of the gator. Feels like this brush is loose. Might come off my hand here, actually. We'll just see what happens with that. Being careful around the teeth. I don't want to get any of this on those. Alright, and now I'm going to take a little Sun Yellow 09008 System's still acting up. One of these days I'm going to get all these problems I have figured out. I don't know when, but someday. Now this one, I'm going to do a little bit along the back and sides of the gator. Just like that. Gives them a little bit of color. A bit more color, and I just nicked the pants. So back in that ashen blue and just touch that up real quick. Looks like a stain, and you know what, that works. True Silver 09207. Alright, if I can get a grip on a brush, it's going to be decent for it. Just shine up the chain on the collar. A little bit on the trigger. The gun barrel needs attention. Driftwood Brown 09162. I just realized I forgot to do McTavish's bandana. So I'm going to just take a little brush real quick, go back into that green, and just give it a little bit of attention. Just a bit, not a lot. Now taking that, if I can get a grip on my brush, Driftwood Brown. Stock of the rifle. Just like that, almost done. Burnt Orange 09111. Well, this is really starting to fight me in the worst ways right now. Really frustrating. And on equipment while I'm working with what I have. And you know what? Actually, last minute decision, I'm going to take a little of that Driftwood Brown again. And just barely graze the tops of these dorsal spines just a bit, not a lot. So I get a third layer in there. Now that burnt orange. Gloves and straps. Oops. The holster and the boots. Okay, that's going to leave Shield Brown 09161 for the mud. If I can, again, get a grip on a decent brush for it. Being careful here, I don't want to nick anything else. Okay, it's got it well enough. Now, pure black again, 09037. I'm going to take a detail brush first. detail brush first, and using a tiny dot, I'm just going to get the gun barrel there. There we go. And then switching to a flathead. Just line the base. Going up to the edge there, trying not to go over. Trying to keep that base insert intact paint-wise. If you're using flock or sand or any other materials, you would paint first, including this step, and then apply by putting a glue solution into the recess and dipping it into a wide-mouth container, like a little Tupperware thing. I don't do that on Malifaux, but I do use flock on War Machine and Warhammer 40,000, so any of those videos near the end will show the technique. Though the more recent ones are going to be better quality than the older ones. There's plenty of criticism on the internet, but very little advice, so I'm more or less figuring these videos out as I go along. And that is it. McTavish. Last thing to do will be to varnish him once this paint is dry. And that's not it for Malifaux, but that is it for the Bayou faction. Doing switching factions for a one-off for the next video. Until then, I am Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, signing out.